Hi, my name is Hector Duran. This is my presentation on the cultural evolution of Apple Inc. For my organizational behavioral therapy class. Um, just to get started, I pretty much did my presentation on the PowerPoint, and my voice is going to be uploaded into video. So this can kind of coincide with the presentation that I'm providing regarding the evolution of Apple and how they've worked as an organization, as a company. Um, First of all, um, everyone knows that the founder, Steve Jobs, um, has probably been said to have been the mad scientist behind the foundation of Apple Incorporated. Oscar Levant once said, "There's a fine line between genius and insanity. I've erased this line." And basically, Apple's commitment through Steve Jobs was to bring the best personal computing experience to students, educators, creative professionals, and consumers around the world through its innovative hardware, software, and internet offerings. Jobs achieved this through placing the focus on the people and not the product, emphasizing how the product affects the consumer on a personal level. Then he would employ a strategy in which the media was already discussing these products even before the products were in market for distribution and sale. That was pretty much the genius behind Steve Jobs was marketing. I remember the first commercial that was ever shown during Super Bowl was the Revolution commercial in which there's an individual running down the middle of a theater and they throw a hammer out into the middle of the screen, obliterating the screen and waking a consciousness, if you will. So I found it very impressive, and since then, I found myself always intrigued by Apple. And even in school, most of our computers that we learned from were specifically from Apple. Now, the next slide shows Apple products and services. The firm offers products and services under the iPhone, iPad, the Mac, the iPod, the Apple Watch, Apple TV brands, consumer and professional software applications under the iOS, OS X, and watchOS brands, and operating systems under the iCloud and Apple Pay brands. I think everyone is pretty much familiar with the technology and really the milestones that Apple has made in technological advances. One of the biggest technological advances was that of the iPod and being able to put music and store a large amount of music into a little piece of technology. I remember having 2,000 songs stored into my iPod at one point when I had an iPod, and now the collective genius in Apple is that they've been able to integrate the iPod into the iPhone, in which now you can download all your music onto your iPhone, and through the assistance with iCloud, you have enough storage to be able to hold this music as well as other pictures, videos, etc., etc. So again, Apple has really paved the way as far as technology is concerned. Apple Incorporated's workforce. Apple's indicated that they have approximately 123 employees within the organization that work in areas of sales, technology, research, and marketing. What I found interesting is in 2018, Glassdoor announced Apple Inc. to be one of 3 organizations to have made their best places to work list of 2018. This is basically a milestone in itself. I'm probably going to overuse this word, at least for the beginning of this presentation, but it's a milestone for the mere fact that Apple and 2 other companies, since the inception of the best places to work list, are the only 3 organizations that have made this list consistently for the last 10 years. Employees have been asked to rate their satisfaction with their company on a 5-point scale, where 1.0 is very dissatisfied and 5.0 is very satisfied. Apple ended up scoring a 4.3 in 2017, meaning that employees were between satisfied and very satisfied. The numbers dipped in 2018 down to 4.0. But again, the workforce here in the United States specifically says that they are proud and happy and satisfied to work with Apple. I found that I believe there was over 90% of the workforce that actually approved of the work that Tim Cook was doing as the CEO of the organization at this point. Recruitment and training, and again, this was taken from Glassdoor as well as the Apple report, the annual report that they provide online, and in which Apple employees indicated that the benefits to working for Apple included the health benefits, the opportunity from work, and decent pay pending on seniority, while the cons represented by the same employees indicated poor management, despondent work balances, causing for a great deal of distress. And again, I mean, I think we've all worked for agencies and organizations where the workload sometimes is overwhelming and consumes you, and oftentimes are found to be stressful. But this didn't take away from the fact that that many of the individuals that were interviewed from Apple gave them a 4.0 or better rating over the course of the last 2 years. Also indicated by these interviews were the indications of the company being fast-paced. However, this pace was indicated to be more of a positive experience as employees found these experiences at Apple to be rewarding. Glassdoor further provides percentages in regards to the overall recruitment of employees, in which further rated the experience of being interviewed by someone at Apple. Glassdoor findings indicate that 65% of those interviewed for a position at Apple were positive experiences, while 20 were neutral and 15 indicated they were a negative experience. 55% that were interviewed had applied online, while 15 were employee referrals and 13% were brought on by the outside recruiters. Difficulty in the interview was rated as average, with interview questions varying from basic knowledge of Apple products to discussing the barriers technicians had when finding solutions to a project-based problem. One of the people that was interviewed explains, they were more interested in specific engineering challenges that I faced when building my projects, which says a great deal. For the most part, I've been through interviews in which agencies collectively ask me a myriad of questions that often don't pertain to the position. So with that said, I value the interview in which my skills are being tested at the time of the interview. And it seems to me like those individuals who are being interviewed for Apple positions, the interviewer is going above and beyond to make sure that the person is qualified and that they're able to take on the workload. Apple Incorporated accomplishments, again, Glassdoor has provided the accolades and awards that include being on the list of Fortune's most admired companies of 2016, Fortune's 500 ranking and number 5 in 2015, and Glassdoor's Employees' Choice Award and as far as top 50 large companies in 2014 and 2013. They were also named America's top corporation for multicultural business opportunities from DiversityBusiness.com in 2012. Apple also provides their own pledges and certifications on Glassdoor's rankings, indicating a pledge to hiring America's veterans, equal pay, increasing all training opportunities for technicians, career advancement, a social responsibility pledge to give back to schools and communities, and a commitment to diversity in the workplace, as well as being registered as a federal and state recognized apprenticeship model. So again, Apple has achieved these milestones because of the company they are. The inner workings of Apple is quite interesting. So in my research, I actually found that the agency really functions quite differently. Apple's late founder, Steve Jobs, developed the organizational infrastructure to be hierarchical in order to ensure his vision remained a focus of the company. Tim Cook has made this current CEO has made certain modifications since taking over, which may have caused the the a organization as a whole to kind of deteriorate a bit, but it does still continue to encourage improvements in innovation and creativity and increase progress within the organization. The hierarchical structure also provides a specific role for everyone involved in the company, including the board of directors, ensuring that they are policing the CEO and other senior management, maintaining the ethical standards of the agency as a whole. Again, the inner workings are very interesting. And then, as you continue doing further research, one of the things that I found troubling about Apple was the agencies that they outsource and the agencies that actually build the products that Apple sells and that Apple creates. Apple has selected to outsource manufacturing outside of the United States, mostly for reasons of making sure that the costs are cheaper. So they've outsourced in manufacturing outside of the United States to local companies throughout the world. Pegatron is one of these agencies, for example. They are one of Apple's major suppliers, and they employ about 100,000 workers in mainland China. Now again, initially when I was taking a look at Apple, I was taking a look at Apple within the inner workings of the organization and decided I wanted to look past that to see if the culture that they've indicated that they have embodied, if it continued with organizations that they hired and outsourced. So what I found is, and this comes from the Verge website, in which Danny Deal, who writes for The Verge, cites a 2015 report from China Labor Watch, reported that Apple workers on the production line salaries to be $350 US dollars a month. This was in 2017. The same report established that the actual wage for workers is not $350, it is $330 a month for most employees who choose to work overtime. So again, for those individuals who choose to work overtime, they make on average $330 a month, US dollars. For those who choose not to work overtime, after deductions, they make about $213 a month. Most workers rely on overtime to pretty much support themselves and their families. According to Apple's official report on their earnings in 2015, the total revenue amounted to $233.7 billion US dollars. Net profit was a total of $53.4 billion. 22.85% of total revenue. In China, Apple received $58.17 billion US dollars in revenue, which is 25.12% of the total revenue in 2015. From this, Apple earned $13.4 billion USD dollars in profits. However, the total base wage of the 1.6 million workers amounted to less than $6.2 billion US dollars. This is considerably less than half of the profits Apple earns in China. I continued, again, the report continues, providing perspective on this culture. With Apple profits declining, these agencies actually, the effects has declined, have been passed on to the suppliers, further influencing profits. Influencing these organizations to mitigate the impact by covert and extreme measures to exploit workers. Measures including excessive and illegal overtime work exceeding 36 hours, which is the legal limit. The recruitment of student interns to work in the same conditions of the workforce, also requiring them to illegally work overtime with an average of 80 hours of overtime, despite Chinese law forbidding companies from asking interns to work overtime. Controlling labor costs by cutting welfare and sharing insurance payments with workers. These are just some of the few extreme measures documented by the Chinese Labor Watch. The report documents a collection of 382 pay stubs from the maintenance department of Pegatron, all of which indicated overtime hours exceeding 36 hours, the legal limit. And 298 of them reported overtime hours of more than 82 hours, which exceeds the 60-hour workweek standard as set by Apple. The report further provides that 109 hours of overtime was reached in March, exceeding the limit by 3 times the statute. Again, the question becomes, You have individuals in the United States, and in my paper, I also document in the United Kingdom, um, with the workforce who are more than satisfied uh, in working with Apple because of the culture that they represent. Now we have these agencies and organizations that are being outsourced who we are finding are not so happy and that are being exploited. Um, when Apple was confronted by this, they stood firm on their inclination, stating, "We care deeply about the people who build our products and the planets we all share. So we hold ourselves and our suppliers to the highest standard to ensure everyone is treated with dignity and respect. And we share our work openly so others can follow our lead." Now, one thing I've learned is leadership should not be consistent, should not only be consistent within the organization, but also outside of the organization when companies like Apple outsource other responsibilities to companies who should also be in line with the same principles. Leading, as defined by Jones and George, is articulating a clear vision, energizing and enabling organizational members so they can understand the part they play in achieving organizational goals. In 2013, Apple was forced to buy back 29,000 total enclosures ahead of the iPhone 5C announcement to maintain order, costing the organization millions. The idea was to maintain an order because of the leak in products that were leaving the Chinese plants and factories. In maintaining these efforts, again, in buying back and buying back 29,000 total enclosures, one could surmise that this amount paid into the conservation of their product could have been equally dedicated to establishing changes in the workforce of China to build that satisfaction within the staff of alliances that Apple has with other organizations throughout the world to better safeguard their products. Now, again, I know that the idea is to maintain consistency and security of their products and making sure that they do not get leaked out into the public before they need to. But again, if Apple was to spend money in specific areas to help build the workforce and maintain the work culture that Apple says that they want to maintain, then they could have easily spent the money for the 29,000 enclosures to give back to those employees that are working with Pegatron and other companies like Pegatron. Apple has demanded its suppliers to be transparent. However, the report has indicated the experience in investigating Pegatron failed to prove any form of transparency being required from Apple. Apple's senior operating vice president, Jeff Williams, says, "We know of no other company doing as much as Apple does to ensure fair and safe working conditions, to discover and investigate problems, to fix and follow through when issues arise, and to provide transparency into the operations of our suppliers." So again, I mean, it has yet to be determined as far as what Apple has been able to do. And we can only surmise that things have gotten better since 2015, 2016. But I wanted to leave, basically this presentation with some final thoughts. Richard Branson once said, "Clients do not come first. Employees come first. If you take care of your employees, they will take care of the clients." It is clear by Glassdoor's ranking that Apple is very much dedicated to the workforce within the organization. Showing these high scores in employee satisfaction, as well as the approval with the leadership of Tim Cook, Apple's culture reflects a great deal of loyalty and respect from its workers. However, the same can't be said about the companies that are being outsourced to mass produce and manufacture Apple products. It is evident by the profit margins and continued success that Apple Inc. has had that they also have a responsibility to ensure the culture of the company is secure both within and abroad. Not just secure in ensuring leaks of their products, but also secure as an infrastructure, aligning those who are collectively chosen to represent the company brand. Protecting humanity, while a big imposition, is necessary to ensure the governance remains intact. A motivated workforce continues to achieve projected outcomes, and everyone who's hired is an extension of Apple Inc. feels a great deal of satisfaction in who they work for and what they do. So again, the emphasis is making these necessary changes that coincides with the culture of Apple. Again, I found it interesting in doing this paper. I always marveled at Apple as a company. I always looked up to Steve Jobs as a CEO, as an innovator, and even most of my products are are Apple, from my phone to my computers. Um, so with that established, um, it was kind of disheartening to see the treatment, the exploitation of many of the workforce outside of the United States. And this doesn't occur just with Apple. This is evident of a lot of agencies and organizations who choose to save money and go outside of the United States in doing so. And a lot of these countries don't have a system of accountability. But I truly believe that if Apple and other agencies or organizations from the United States are going to outsource, they then have a responsibility to make sure that they watch out for all of humanity. Um, Again, it was a great opportunity to read up and research on the two sides of the workforce represented in the Apple organization. Um, so with that said, that's the completion of my presentation. I think I probably went a little bit over, but I do hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, please feel free to hit me up. Take care.